Hi, I'm really sorry for the terrible quality of this video. Not only the lighting is terrible because it's 9 p.m, but also I have to speak quite quietly because there's a whole family in my house and I don't want to be heard. Yes, this is going up very late. I actually was going to record this video tomorrow, but surprisingly I am starting an internship tomorrow, which I thought I wouldn't be starting until like next week. So I don't know when I will have time to record next video, so I just sat down in the evening and decided to record this video nevertheless. My thoughts might be all over the place and I'm sorry for that. I don't have time to prepare for this video, so there we go. I'll have to use my phone quite a lot because I don't remember what I read in June. Okay, so we're gonna go from my lowest rating to the highest rating, and we're actually gonna start with a DNF. And that was The Interestings by wolizer. I don't even want to waste time on talking about this book because it was terrible. I DNF'd it about 200 pages in. I couldn't stand the characters. There was no plot whatsoever. It was so boring. The writing style I didn't get along with. It's from what I gathered, it was supposed to be funny, but this kind of humor really didn't click with me. So basically this is a story about a group of 6 teenagers who go to this summer camp for gifted teenagers. Together they meet there and form a friendship, and we kind of follow them throughout their life and see where they ended up. The thing is, most of the characters in this book were extremely one-dimensional. We see most of the story. I didn't finish the book, so I can't really do a full, very in-depth review of the story, but as far as I got, most of the story was told from perspective of Jules, who was absolutely terrible. Just first of all, in the first chapter, she experienced this weird change of like transitioning from this like very awkward, shy girl to this social butterfly that's just really funny and people just love her, and I'm just like, this is so unbelievable. And also we were like told that she's funny, but we don't really see that. There was one character I liked, that was Jonah. While I was reading it, we got one chapter from his perspective. I was like, okay, this is not that bad. I'm actually interested in his story. But then we went back to Jules' perspective and I was like, never mind, this is still terrible. So I didn't have to. I have no regrets. I still rated it 2 stars even though I didn't finish the book. I know that might be controversial to rate a book you didn't finish, but fight me. The next thing would be, I don't know what it's actually called. Sea of Strangers by Lang Leave. Not sure if this is how it's pronounced. It's a collection of poetry. This is that kind of like Tumblr slash Insta poetry that I at this point know that I don't get along with. I give it 2 stars. It wasn't that great. Yeah, I feel like this is a poetry that's like very much directed towards teenagers, so it's like YA poetry. I'm not sure if I don't know if it's right or not, but if I don't really enjoy YA, why would I read like YA poetry? It makes no sense, so I'm kind of giving up on that kind of poetry. But yeah, I'm not giving up on poetry altogether. There is one collection of poetry that I'm very interested in, but I currently can't get my hands on, and that is Don't Call Us Dead. I've heard some amazing reviews and I'm very keen on reading it. Okay, the next thing I read was... no, that's not the next thing I read. The next book is Giovanni's Room. I really wish I did this wrap up sooner so I actually remembered anything about the books that I'm talking about. But yeah, I give it 3 stars. This is a story about David, who is in Paris. He's originally from the US, but so he was in Paris with his girlfriend, and he proposed to her, and she decided she needs some time off, and she went to Spain to kind of think this proposition, to think if she does want to marry him or not. So he's left alone in Paris, where he meets Giovanni, who is a bartender. It's kind of the first chapter, but that's also when we find out that Giovanni was actually sentenced to death for some crime. We don't know what exactly he did. And the timeline kind of skips between the time that David and Giovanni met and kind of the day before his death sentence. This was, you know, first of all, forgettable. Surprisingly forgettable, because I barely remember anything about this book, really. I remember Giovanni being just an extremely unlikable character. He was very, like, every time he opened his mouth I was like, oh, just shut up. Like, I disagreed with like everything he said. He was quite misogynistic and just pretentious. He just felt like the kind of person that's like extremely hard to be around. Then we have David, from whose perspective we actually kind of see everything when it comes to both of those timelines. And the thing is, I feel like I didn't really get to know David. Internalized homophobia is very much present in this book. David just refuses to admit that he's gay. Not only, like, obviously not to other people, because that would be just stupid, because it's the 50s, so that's just dangerous, but like to himself, he cannot admit that he's attracted to men. And it's weird, they form a relationship, Giovanni and David, that's like, you know they will, but he still doesn't see himself as someone who's attracted to men. And yeah, I don't know, there was a lot of kind of showing and not a lot of telling, which I guess this is the way it's supposed to be, but I wish there was no more telling, because I have no idea what David really felt. And it's an interesting book to analyze. The writing style is kind of lyrical, and people really love his writing style and say it's very beautiful, but I found it kind of hard to get into. And yeah, I'm not saying I don't recommend this book, but it just kind of fell flat for me. Okay, so the next thing we have Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. It's a webcomic that's actually published on Tumblr, and you can read the first few chapters right now. And I will link it in the description, but this webcomic will come out as a graphic novel in, I want to say, October. I think it will include the first 2 chapters. And yeah, I give it 4 stars. It's a story about this openly gay teenager in a British high school. Yeah, he's in a weird relationship right now, and then he kind of meets this guy who's a rugby player, and he convinces him to join his sports team, and they form a friendship, and, you know, maybe something more, who knows. Yeah, it's just light, fluffy and cute, and I really enjoyed it. I think I actually might read Alice Oseman's Radio Silence. I didn't think I would, but yeah, I really enjoyed this comic, and I'm very much interested in other works by this author. Next we have Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. Okay, what was this about? It was a story about 3 women, one that's 40, one in her 30s, one in her 20s, and they all have kids in the same age that are about to start, was it primary school or preschool? I don't remember. And yeah, kind of in the first chapter we find out that someone died, and we don't know who, so we kind of try to figure out that along the way. I really enjoyed it. I thought at first, when I was reading the first chapter, I thought it would be a little bit too cliche, but I actually really liked it. I really like Liane Moriarty's humor. I thought it was really funny at places, and this is more of a mystery than a thriller, and I really enjoyed this. So honestly, most of the time this read like just like a contemporary fiction. It's set also in Australia, and I think it's kind of actually the first book that I've read that's set in Australia. Yeah, the only thing I can complain about is the ending. The kind of climax of the whole story was interesting and I liked how that resolved, but the actual ending of the book left me a little bit unsatisfied. I don't know, I both liked it and didn't like it, but I thought the story would end differently, but it didn't, but I also see why it didn't, because that would be quite unbelievable and not realistic. So the ending that I thought we would get would be more interesting, but at the same time it wouldn't be as realistic as the ending Liane Moriarty decided to go with. So yeah, I will definitely be reading more books by Liane Moriarty. I'm thinking about reading What Alice Forgot because the premise sounds really interesting. And the last book, yes, I know, you all waited for this. No, not really. But that's The Tenant of Wildfell by Anne Bronte. This is a story about a mysterious woman who moves into this new house that's called Wildfell Hall, and that starts a lot of gossips in the village. First we see things from Gilbert's perspective, who is, you know, a young male who lives in this village, town, village, yeah. Kind of through him we get to know more and more about Helen, but after some time we actually get to read things from the perspective of Helen herself, because there's kind of three parts of the story, and the first part is from the perspective of Gilbert. Then we see a diary written by Helen, so we see kind of what happened before she got to the village. And then we go back to Gilbert's perspective. Actually, Gilbert's perspective is written in letters. You kind of find out who he's writing to at the end of the story. But yeah, it's an epistolary novel, I guess you could call it. But it's also like a narrative within a narrative, which in Wuthering Heights really annoyed me, but in here I actually kind of enjoy that. So yeah, we get to know Helen a little bit more when we read things from her perspective, when we're reading her diary, and we see kind of how she ended up in that village and what happened to her. I would say the thing that's at the back of the book is quite a spoiler, but basically Helen marries a man who turns out to be not who she thought he was. He's quite abusive, and I really loved it. I give it 5 stars. I talked about it a bit before, that it's quite a feminist novel that's, I would say, ahead of its time really. Both Gilbert and Helen are quite not exactly likable characters. Gilbert is very impulsive and spoiled and petty. Well, my camera stopped recording, so that's lucky. Yes, Gilbert really grows throughout the story, and I personally actually really like Gilbert. Helen is quite self-righteous, and she's very religious, and that's quite a big part, not who she is, but her faith is really a big part of her, and really influences her choices in life. It personally took me a while to warm up to Helen. And Bronte's writing is quite straightforward, and in my opinion, when compared to Charlotte, she kind of is a little bit bolder with kind of making her points. And if you haven't read The Tenant of the Wildfell Hall, give it a try. In my opinion, it's really good. If you didn't like Wuthering Heights, you might actually like this. This is a lot less gothic compared to Jane Eyre or especially Wuthering Heights. It's still kind of gothic, you know, it's not really a Bronte novel if someone doesn't throw themselves on the ground in despair, but you know, I don't make the rules. But yeah, I would say it's far more realistic, but I would definitely recommend it. So that's everything. I don't know if I made any sense today, but yeah, tomorrow I'm starting an internship, so I won't have as much time as I used to make videos. I might start recording my videos in this room with this terrible lighting, so I'm sorry in advance. I hope it's not absolutely terrible. And yeah, the next video will be probably a currently reading video where I will kind of update you on what I'm reading and kind of what I'm going to read throughout June. So see you next video, bye!